Hello there, very special good evening to you, St. Lucia. Welcome to a new season of Mr. Chairman. I'm David Samuels, and we got a very interesting program for you this evening as usual, and I have some really wonderful guests. Tonight we have Father Lambert St. and he has just launched his new book, In Turbulent Waters, which is a vivid exposition of some of the evil within the St. Lucian society. The author is joined by Mr. Everistaus Jn Marie, who shares his perspectives about the publication. So it's all on Mr. Chairman tonight. At some point, maybe shortly after 9 o'clock, we open the lines and give you, our esteemed viewers, the opportunity to have your say on tonight's topic. Welcome, Father St. Welcome, Everistaus. Nice to have you both here.
Thank you, Dave.
Right. I hope we are going to achieve quite a lot tonight. There are some subjects which one can describe as taboo, and many of the things which you have written so extensively are regarded in the main as taboo subjects in St. Lucia. Briefly, Father St. give us your reasons, motivations for publishing such a book against the backdrop of what several readers would dismiss as myth, fantasy, superstitions.
Thank you, Dave. I think initially I shared the same view with those who espouse that kind of view as well. In my early age, my youth, I was quite adverse to even listening to any subject or topic on such matters. Why? As you said, it was taboo. And if at all you did speak of it in public, you were considered as a sort of illiterate, backward, country booky kind of a person. However, if you notice, the first chapter of the book starts with l'histoire time. And for us who grew up in the days without television or other forms of nocturnal entertainment, the senior members of the community would gather together to tell stories. And oftentimes this l'histoire was about the black magic, the witch, etc., etc. And of course, like anybody else who wanted to be recognized as a civilized, quote-unquote, person, I treated the whole subject as a myth, the legend, and the fairy tales. Not, of course, until I became a priest and began working in the parishes and people started coming up to me. Very early in my priesthood, I began cataloging, as it were, various cases that were brought to my attention.
You actually cataloged
many cases over the years. In fact, for my very first year in the priesthood, this kind of subject intrigued me because the number of persons who were coming. But of course, this calls for a lot of discernment, because you have to be careful that you do not chase a demon behind every tree. But as you continue, there are certain cases where you are coming face to face with some diabolic person or spirit that can either floor you or intimidate you. Now, this, I think, was an experience in every parish that I worked in St. Lucia.
So what does that really say about the St. Lucian society then?
I think in the absence of tradition, the absence of rites of passage, the absence of true, authentic African culture, the demise of African traditional religion, the demise of an African focus and identity of people themselves, who am I? People are lacking a center, as it were. And since they lack that spiritual center, that cultural center, that traditional center, they grab at anything which they think will articulate their personhood, their identity. And more so, persons who are desperately in search of power, wealth, fame, and identity in the public are those who pursue that kind of demonic activity or this kind of lifestyle. I think what came home to me was Gina, Harrier, and Everter, who is the last case that I dealt with. These three persons were really a ruckus. It was really a turbulent experience for me. Their odyssey was something beyond the extraordinary. I mean, I've had other cases before, but this one was indeed really turbulent waters. And at the end of the odyssey, their tempestuous ordeal and journey, they looked at me and said, "Father, you've got to do something about this, because many other young people are trapped in the occult." And of course, teachers themselves had told me that they were vivid, clear experiences that they've had in schools as well. You know, I remember a particular case where I was called immediately to a school, and some people were trying to exorcise that child. And I said to them, "Leave her alone and go home." And they thought I was just nuts. And I said, "Just leave her alone. She's too agitated right now. And you need to take a walk with her into her history. You need to find who the parents are. You need to know the life that they have lived. And therefore, it is important to do so." A week later, I showed up. And of course, I met with the family. I met with the child. And in the process, the child just manifested on me, just changed. And there was that heavy, gruffy voice. "What the hell do you want in here?" You know, it's like, oh, the mother was pregnant. None of them were ever baptized.
Ah.
And what happened was they came from a South American country, migrated back to St. Lucia, and of course, the deceased grandfather migrated into that child.
The deceased grandfather migrated into
that child. Okay? Because after a long struggle with that child, it was revealed that it was the father's spirit.
So essentially, the story is about your priestly ministry?
It is about my priestly ministry, my personal experience in various parishes. And our deep concern, as I said, for Gina, Harrier, and Everter, is the participation of the youth and who it is that is introducing the youth into this. It is really the bourgeoisie.
But we'll get to that. We'll get into some of the
nitty-gritties.
Some of the stories. I just want to read an excerpt. Mrs. DeVoe, in a very interesting and forthright preface, she says here, and I want you to comment, and I also want Everistaus to do the same. "It is often difficult to decide which is which, as sometimes the various stories and circumstances presented are seemingly so unbelievable. Nevertheless, the author has tread where many fear to go. The occult, demonic, satanic, and sadistic areas of human persons who have become worshippers of such ludicrous spirits and cults. Very few people would have the stamina and courage to stand up to hidden realities that exist side by side in our so-called Christian society. We adopt the attitude that if I can't see it, I don't know about it. I can't believe it, and therefore it cannot really exist. It is merely imagination, fabrication, and speculations. However, the author has lived through the agonies of many individuals whose lives have been devastated by their sojourns with the occult, demons, Satan, etc. The task of trying to release such people from the clutches of the devil is an extremely difficult, emotional, and trying experience which invariably can wear you down physically as well as spiritually if you are not careful and deeply rooted in your faith and belief in Jesus Christ.
That is nothing but the truth. And every case is a very tall challenge. It is not something that you can confront head on. There is need for very in-depth spiritual preparation. And even in doing so, it can be still very tasking, very intimidating. It can wear you off mentally, physically, and spiritually because you are confronted. You are in a fight. And the spirits are going to resist at every given opportunity because they have made this place their home. You will remember that
this place meaning your physical being.
Physical being. They have taken up residence in there and they claim it as their rightful home. And they wouldn't want to leave unless the name of Jesus, the power of Jesus, the grace of God enters into that person and expels it. And of course, that's what perhaps may put me just where I am.
Meaning your health.
My health.
Okay.
And that is why I'm still reluctant not to touch any cases anymore.
It has really weighed you down.
It has weighed me down.
Over the years.
And I still have a strong feeling that my odyssey last year was a direct consequence of the case that I'd last dealt with. Because you were dealing with spirits,
and you don't want, do you want to share that with us? You don't have to mention names, but
no, I
the
will
case,
not mention
of course, I didn't
because
expect you
they'll
to
be
mention
dead
it.
by tomorrow morning.
Who will be dead?
The individuals.
Oh.
And that is why their names are not mentioned in the book.
Well, I don't expect you to mention
No, I wouldn't
such
do
names
that.
anyway. Your perspective
Well,
on that really interesting bit there?
I mean, evil practices, I mean, it's very well written, but evil practices, while they may not, you may not see the efficacy of the practices in terms of what they can achieve. But what is very clear is, if anything, they certainly inhibit a level of fear. And that fear could immobilize you.
Precisely.
And as a bare minimum, that is how efficacious evil can be. If anything, it can immobilize you, having you losing faith in yourself.
So evil is just as efficacious as prayer is, would you say?
The evil one is powerful, but he is not in any way parallel to God or the power of God. He is intimidated by God. He's intimidated by the name of the saints. He's intimidated by the Blessed Virgin Mary. Very, very, very much.
Yeah,
But to
I
answer
just
your
found it very
question-
interesting. You know,
Yeah, but to answer your
yes.
question, as we in terms of comparisons, I mean, always remember what evil is. Evil is the absence of good. It doesn't have an existence of its own.
No.
So it always has to be superior to good, because you only take away from what is good and doesn't exist by itself. So to answer your question, it is not as efficacious as anything that is good.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, what it does is to try to mimic the efficaciousness of God and try at every given opportunity to dismiss the power of God. Because those who participate in the Black Mass would carry away the Holy Eucharist. They would defecate over it. They would stab it. They would urinate over it and swear at it to be able to appease Satan.
What is your personal experience, Everistaus? I mean, we've heard clearly he has had quite a fight on his hands. But there has always been a sense in the St. Lucian society. I have heard stories, for example, just to give you one, many merchants in certain places in St. Lucia would come to their place of business very early in the morning and they could be seen sweeping and cleaning and using all turpentine and all sorts of strange smelling things just outside where their businesses are located. And to the ongoing public, people are just looking on and saying, wow, what is going on here? Is that superstition or this is reality?
Well, you asked me.
And are you familiar with that sort of
Well,
thing?
I've
I'm
heard
sure
the
you're-
stories. We have the stories. You asked me a personal experience. I mean, I have to tell you, initially I'm a skeptic, but me being a skeptic doesn't mean the thing doesn't exist. And it has a power. It has a power. I remember having one experience which jolted me a bit. I left my office one evening, and I locked up my office, went home, opened my door with my keys, entered the house, and went to bed that evening. In the morning, the following morning, I left home on my way back to work. So in leaving and trying to get out, I'm looking for my keys, and I couldn't locate the keys. So I assumed that I must have left my keys in my office. I left home without my keys, got to the office, my office is locked. Something, oh gosh, how is that? How could an office be locked without me closing it? Anyway, I eventually had to break down the door, entered, and there were no keys. And I thought, that's rather strange. But I left my office, I locked my office, I opened my door with my keys, and I couldn't find my keys. So after about, say, an hour of pondering what possibly could have happened, how I could have misplaced the keys, I decided that morning to proceed to my mother's place, which is all the way in Marisol. My office is in Lance Road. I went to the house and I went to see my parents. And while we were talking, I'm in the kitchen of their house, and I saw this bunch of keys sitting on the worktop. And I thought, that looks like my keys. And my father said he had seen those keys here for a little while, and he wondered whose keys they were. I had not been to my parents' home for over a week. I had not been there for over a week. And I thought, wow. So, I began to sit up and listen.
Some folks will hear this and say, oh, you are probably absent-minded.
Absolutely not.
Perhaps
because it happened again. I had those incidents, and maybe there's a running joke at the office, you and your keys. Always and I got the sense that somebody was playing around with me. So while I say I'm a skeptic, I'm telling you about real experiences of these things happening. So I don't dismiss it at all. And like I said, at a bare minimum, there is some efficacy in the evil, in that it can immobilize you, put you off track, distract you, and have you to be fearful and take away all your enthusiasm to do things. The fear, the power of fear.
How challenging, Father, is it for you recognizing that people are generally dismissive of such stories that one hears from time to time? For example, I'm sure that account that Everistaus just cited, some people would say otherwise.
I think unless you've had some personal contact with an immediate situation or a case, you may tend to be, as I said in my earlier youth, even as a seminarian, I was quite dismissive of this whole thing until the first case arrived, and my first reaction was to run away and to quarrel with God.
While you were a priest?
Yes, to run away. And I said to God, what are you doing? I've never been trained to handle something like this before. The seminary did not prepare me for this.
But does it do so today?
I don't even think so. And it's a sequence of events that followed after this the child appearing in a dream and thanking me for freeing them from so-and-so, Bolo. I sent to get a mother the next day and say, but who is Bolo? And I'd be like, that was an old man. He died some time ago. And I remember the kid saying, specifically, it's a man. It's a man. I asked on numerous occasions, identify your mommy. There she is. Where's your daddy? Here he is. Your auntie? There she is. And she kept pointing in that direction all the time. You know? And it's only then I sort of realized what I was dealing with. Of course, still I was kind of dismissive until as things continue to precipitate.
What are your personal views about the book? Recognizing that he regards you as a confidant, obviously, and he wanted you to critique the book, get your views and opinions about what he had written. Overall,
Well,
in a couple of minutes, what would you say?
I think he gave a perspective of a subculture of St. Lucian society which believes that power, wealth, and status are ends in themselves, and they are prepared to go to any length to achieve it. That's what came out in that book for me. And that, and paradoxically, it's happening among people of faith. Because
I find that quite curious.
yeah,
It's a paradox, like you rightly
Yeah.
said. It's
happening.
extraordinary.
It's happening among people of faith, and somehow, and it shows you how the power of old traditions, is difficult to dispense with. And rather than see it at the conflicts, they try somehow to marry the two. That they can somehow pursue these things and still be people of faith.
That's right.
And it's a challenge. I don't know how the church deals with this, but people have this I would say, erroneous view of the importance of certain things of society, and perhaps it is a reflective of the culture that we give so much attention and to issues of money and wealth in society, material possession, that we have forgotten that we have a spiritual side to us.